Welcome to Canadian Innovators, the show that celebrates innovation, entrepreneurs, and the Canadian spirit. I'm Jocelyn Bamford, and every week we introduce a new entrepreneur, tell their stories, and unpack the challenges of keeping jobs in Canada, and discuss potential solutions for job growth and prosperity. At the beginning of the COVID outbreak in Canada, we realized that we had sent offshore many of the products that were necessary for our safety and security. Things like gowns, gloves, and ventilators were not made in Canada. Governments at all levels and hospitals asked companies to step up. Joining me today is Steve Wagner from Salus Marine, one of our entrepreneurs who rose to the challenge. Welcome, Steve.
Thank you, Jocelyn.
And let's get right to it. You have some amazing stories, and I want to hear about, and our listeners want to hear about how you got started. So let's talk about, you run two companies. That's amazing. How did they come to be?
Well, let's start from the beginning. I graduated from Carleton University School of Industrial Design and immediately started working for Cooper Canada, making hockey equipment, designing hockey equipment. They were bought by Bauer, then by Nike. So for 15 years, I had the privilege of designing some of the world's best hockey equipment. And it was such an amazing experience. I probably should have been paying that company to work there. It was fun. But some of the experiences, like watching a game on a hockey night in Canada and seeing the two goalies at either end of the ice and seeing them wear your equipment. You got a charge out of that. You see your product on TV. Or when there's a fight broke out. Not that I condone fighting or like fighting, but the jersey came off, you could see the equipment underneath. So that was fun. So fast forward to the start of Salus.
Now, before you get into that, you did tell me you had an interesting experience and that you helped design the first women's hockey shoulder pads.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Okay, well, that was under the Cooper brand, the Cooperall brand. They were making Cooperalls at the time. And women hockey players before that wore ringette shoulder pads or men's shoulder pads. So they'd never wore a woman-specific hockey shoulder pads with the right amount of protection. So ergonomically and from a protective point of view, we designed. So I had the privilege of designing the very first women's hockey shoulder pad.
Oh, very cool. Now talk to us about how you started your company and both of them.
So Salus was a basement startup. In 1999, I literally bought a sewing machine, threw it on top of the car, and working on the basement, designing prototypes, making samples, while at the same time taking a business course and working on the business plan. And from there, Salus grew. And our market is a constant wear market. And what I mean by that, PFDs that are made for sailors, canoeists, kayakers, or anybody that wants to wear their PFD.
And a PFD is a personal flotation device, right?
Yes, okay. Yes. And why it's important that they wear it, there's an industry saying the only good PFD is the one you're wearing. And that's important because we have about 350 drownings a year in Canada, half of which are boating related. But so the design didn't come by accident. When we started out, when I say we, the corporate we did some focus groups. We brought the sailors in, pizza and beer, and they brought their jackets. They brought what they had, and we asked, what do you like about it? What don't you like? And often when they said what they don't like, it became a design challenge. And our philosophy behind design, and maybe I can best explain it with an analogy. We're not designing a toaster. We're designing something that browns bread. We're not designing a lawnmower. We're designing something that cuts grass. So with that out-of-the-box thinking, we often came up with something more innovative, creative, and refreshing, and something the world hadn't seen before. So if you get the design right, the marketing, the production, the sales, it falls into place that much easier. So starting with the right design was paramount, and getting it right.
That's great. And you also have another company called Barbarian. Let's talk quickly about that in the 30 seconds we have left.
Sorry. Somebody came knocking on the door looking for a job. They worked at Barbarian. It's a company local to Salus. They were closing down, and they're selling off all the parts. And I thought, the whole is worth more than the sum of the parts. And we ended up buying the company and bringing back all the employees and starting up again. And right now it's thriving. We can't make enough. So it's
wonderful. How many employees do you have?
At Barbarian, we have about 80 and 60 at Salus.
So we're going to go to break, and when we come back, we're going to hear how Steve pivoted to assist with the COVID crisis. I'm Jocelyn Bamford, and this is Canadian Innovators.
It seems like there's a lot of talk lately about avoiding risk. Where we're going, being prepared turns a little risk into a lot of fun. Salus Marine, made in Canada. Live the adventure.
Welcome back. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. My guest today is Steve Wagner from Barbarian Sportswear and Salus Marine. And what a great commercial we just saw, very inspiring. So I'm going to take you back to the year of February 2020. The world was in a panic to buy PPE. Canada has come to realize that we are short on supply. The federal government has destroyed millions of dollars in PPE, and it did not restock. Hospitals are running low. Nursing homes are running out. Prices are skyrocketing, and governments of all levels are asking Canadian manufacturers to step up. And I know that many businesses that belong to the Coalition of Concerned Manufacturers and Businesses retooled to manufacture PPE to join the fight. So tell us about that for you and how you retooled. I know that's a Herculean effort to completely retool your plant. We have some pictures, and we'd like you just to walk us through the steps that you took and what it was like.
Well, we received a call from the regional health board to make gowns. And so not having the material to make it, we had to repurpose the life jacket, the PFD gown material to make the gown. So the first 10,000 gowns we made were life jacket material gowns. And those are the red gowns that you see here in the photo.
So we have some pictures here. So walk us through the pictures.
And that's Patrick from the Cambridge Hospital receiving his first order. He was very excited to see the facility and to receive his first shipment of gowns in that photo.
And I'm sure it was an amazing feeling because I know that a lot of the hospital administrators were panicking that we weren't going to have proper
and it took a while to
protective
get there with the certification and the
So tell us about the certification. You just don't start making gowns and gloves. You have to go through a certification process.
And they provided us a consultant. So we had the facility certified as well as the gown certified. The gowns were tested in Montreal at a lab.
Okay, great. Now you also did some gowns for first responders. So we're going to take a picture, look at this picture,
Yes,
and tell us about this.
So the firefighters, they wanted to wear the gowns over their bunker gear because they didn't, when they go onto a scene, they have to decontaminate their bunker gear, and that's a lot of work. So putting the gowns over top allowed them to do it, just change out the gowns and move on to their next appointment.
So also very exciting.
Yeah.
So tell us, how did you approach your plant? I mean, you just don't go in one day and start making gowns and gloves. There's certain things you have to do in your plant other than certification. How do you reorganize your plant and your staff?
Well, and the staff embraced the change. A lot of them thought they were going to be laid off and things were going to get a little rough during this layoff, but they all embraced. The hospitals came together to show us what they wanted to see in the design. We made the first few prototypes. They liked them. And we had to buy some machinery, but not a lot. And the rest was...
And how did you find, was there a training gap, or was it very easy to pivot from making flotation devices to making gowns?
It was fairly easy. The gowns were pretty simple. It's like falling off a log compared to making some of the more complicated PFDs and shirts that we make.
So one of the things I know that a lot of manufacturers talked about was in those early weeks, their employees were afraid.
Yep.
People were scared to come to work. Manufacturers kept going. They didn't stop for a minute. So talk to us a little bit about how did you get your employees to work and how'd you overcome some of those challenges?
Well, first of all, we gave them an incentive and some extra pay to come in. We introduced more lunch breaks so that they could distance themselves from one another. We had more cleaning coming in once a day on all the washrooms and the touch areas. We propped up all the doors so that they didn't have to touch a door going in and out of lunchrooms or the building, and there's sanitizer stations throughout.
So did you have any employees that were afraid to come to work, and how did you manage through that?
Well, we did have some, and we, at that point, we said, look, you don't have to come into work. So we did the best we could with what we had.
And did you have staff shortages at that time?
We
What
did.
did you do to manage through
Well,
that?
what we did, we actually had to contract some work out to some home sewers, move some stuff up to Salus. And the synergy between the two companies worked well for us to be able to do that.
I'm always amazed at how quickly companies were able to retool and absolutely step up to the challenge. And it's not an easy challenge. Manufacturers worked right through. So we're going to take a quick break. We're going to be back, and we're going to hear more about your employees. I'm Jocelyn Bamford, and you're watching Canadian Innovators. And we're back. Welcome back to Canadian Innovators. My guest today is Steve Wagner from Salus Marine and also from Barbarian Sportswear. So right before the break, we were talking about how you overcame retooling for the COVID challenge, and it was a great story. But I wanted to take a step back and just talk about, in general, starting a business. Were there times that you didn't think you were going to make it? What were those challenges? Tell us a little bit about that. Take us back to those times.
The very first challenges was just getting a bank to take notice. And, after 3 banks that said, we're not interested, I actually want to go back to them and show them that what we're trying to borrow is pales in comparison to what our monthly salary is. So it's kind of funny. And it's a seasonal business. So trying to margin your line of credit on a seasonal company is difficult at best. But what we try to do is keep our line fresh so that the customers keep coming back, and of course keeping the costs low. And by doing that, we're looking at nesting for utilization, keeping the times, like saving 3 seconds on a minute operation. Doesn't sound like a lot, but 3 seconds throughout the entire day is 24 minutes found. So,
wow.
So realizing some of those cost savings.
So complete innovation all the time.
Always
now,
looking, yeah.
One of the things I found very interesting when I'm talking to some of our entrepreneurs is a lot of them started out working at large corporations. And it really is a leap of faith to go start your own business. So talk to me about making the decision, what made you decide to leave the kind of safety and security of a large corporation to go out on your own?
Well, after having the experience of working in a large corporation, you had that, taking chances is fun. And jumping off a cliff and landing on your feet, there's something exhilarating about it. And sometimes being the little guy and rising to that challenge it's exhilarating as well. So, all the naysayers saying, in the banks especially, saying, no, we're not interested. I don't think you can do what you want to accomplish here. And I guess proving them wrong.
And why flotation devices? How do you make from making hockey equipment to flotation devices? What was your motivation
Well,
there?
I grew up in Kingston, sailing capital of the world. So always sailing. Now working at designing hockey equipment and foam and straps, designing PFDs is not a huge departure to that of designing shoulder pads and elbow pads. So it was an easy transition as far as that was concerned.
And were you addressing something that you didn't like with the flotation devices? You thought you could do it better?
Yeah, we saw a lot of that. And what we saw were people not wanting to wear the PFDs. So making them more stylish, more comfortable, more utility, anything that would make the person want to wear their PFD.
And you also have the specialty niche market, because we're a boating family. All my kids grew up on a boat, and the first life preserver that I bought for the little ones were the Salus.
Yeah.
So talk about that little niche market and how you made it more comfortable, because certainly those old ones were not very comfortable for small ones.
Well, everything from the soft foam to the round edge to having the height so that the child can sit down and the vest isn't riding up around their chin. So some of the basic needs of having a good, comfortable PFD.
Perfect.
Then we had something called a bijou, a baby life jacket. And we go from making baby vests to vests for the military, D&D and the Coast Guard, and the first responders. So a lot of what we call the SAR vest, the search and rescue vest, it's the firemen that are the first responders. They are doing the shore-based ice water and swift water rescue. So we have a vest that is a one-size-fits-all, and works on those guys. So,
Now, we just have about a minute left, and I wanted to really talk to you because I know you do some really neat things for your employees. So let's talk a little bit about what your project is to keep your employees happy.
The latest project is putting a garden outside on our property and allowing the employees to grow their own. And we're going to give them $30 each to get their plants started or buy some plants and have their own 10 by 15 little plot of garden. So.
And how have you found your employees? I know that entrepreneurs, when they give back to their employees, it just creates this family cycle environment. Have you found that in your business?
Yeah, I guess we do. And I don't know why it is that we do what we do. It just seems right, and wanting to give back or do things and making it a fun environment is important.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have people want to come to work.
Yep.
And so when we get back, we're going to take a quick break in a minute. But when we get back, we're going to talk about some of the challenges with policy. And I'm going to ask you, if you were the Prime Minister or the Premier, what you would do to overcome those. So we're going to put you in the hot seat.
All right.
We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be right back on Canadian Innovators. Welcome back. You're watching Canadian Innovators, and I'm here with Steve Wagner from Salus Marine and Barbarian Sportswear. Before we went to the break, Steve, I was going to put you on the hot spot. I wanted to hear about your challenges, what policies are harming growth, what policies are preventing you from reaching your full potential. And then I'm going to later ask you, if you were the politician at any level, Prime Minister, Premier, what you do to get things moving. So let's start with, tell me about your challenges.
Challenges is keeping the manufacturing domestic and fighting against offshore pressures. So I mean, that's a challenge every day.
So tell me a bit about those offshore pressures.
Well, the labor rates in Asia are a lot lower than those of North America. Mm-hmm. So we're competing head to head with a lot of those offshore manufacturers. And in both facilities, we're making the product from scratch. We're knitting the yarn at Barbarian, making shirts, and that's unheard of.
That's amazing. Yeah, you rarely hear about a Canadian manufacturer, but I know that there's a desire to have Canadian manufacturing and being brought back to Canada. So tell me a little bit about some of the other policies. Are there any other policies that are hindering your growth?
There's a handful. What I think, can I jump to your next question?
Yeah, absolutely.
What I think the government should do is look at industry and have two taxation models. One that looks at domestic industry and domestic occupation as well versus global industry. And instead of taxing the goods coming in and burdening with tariffs and duties, why not make our manufacturers stronger for our export? And we all know without, and some people don't realize it, without the exports, you can't have imports.
Exactly. I like it. It. That's a good thought. Do you have any other thoughts of policy you'd like to see?
And we know too that industry, I mean, there's a lot of exports. I mean, tourism is an export.
Right.
But without these industries, that's new money coming into a system.
Right.
You need new money. Services move money around.
Right.
Manufacturing brings new money into an economy. And you know, without balanced trade, we can't have unbalanced trade. The dollar goes for a whack.
Right.
And when that happens, it hurts all Canadians.
So is there anything else I love your idea of providing tax incentives to manufacture here. Any other ideas you have to bring manufacturing back and reshore manufacturing in Canada?
Yeah, I off the top of my head, I can't think of anything, but there are a lot of little ideas that I have.
Okay, so tell us about the future. What's your plans for both of your companies for the future, and where do you see things going for your business?
Right now, we're struggling to find labor in both companies. We actually went as far as offering free transportation from employees that live from out of town to attract them. That's somewhat helping, but right now I don't understand it. Our order book is far exceeded what we've ever had before. So our challenge is employees and some of the supply chain. We're having supply chain issues.
So I hear that from everywhere. Talk to me a little bit about supply chain. We just have about 30 seconds left.
Well, what used to be a 2 or 3 month lead time on some supplies has turned into 6 and 8, and we didn't see it coming, and it's hurt our flow of production, and it's resulted in a few layoffs, and that hurts, especially at a time when we needed the production.
Yeah, so we really not only need to retrench manufacturing, we need to make sure that we have a stable supply chain here in Canada so that we can grow. And as you said, you made a great point. Services move money around, manufacturing brings money in.
Yep.
During COVID, Canadian companies and manufacturers stepped up to support Canada's fight against COVID. We all saw what a vulnerable position we were in without critical manufacturing in Canada. However, the fight is not over with COVID in a stable state. Canada needs a strategy to keep and attract manufacturing here in Canada. And this starts with affordable energy and a strategy for the resource sector. Without this, we may find ourselves during the next crisis, not only to be out of the necessary PPE, but without the necessary energy to run our hospitals and plants. I'm Jocelyn Bamford. Thank you for watching Canadian Innovators.